Hello, I'm Robert, fact checker and science blogger, and helping people who are scared of various things. And this just hope to help a little bit with the discussions going on in our group, where people got a bit worked up about this article I did recently about death rates and mortality rates of COVID-19 compared to seasonal flu. So I would like to make it very clear that I'm not suggesting that COVID-19 is a harmless disease. And COVID-19, if they hadn't stopped it in China, then the big report about it, the international experts, they all were certain that they would have had hundreds of thousands of people infected by now. And they have stopped in China alone, and of course spreading out to the rest of the world. It's been a huge difference what the Chinese did there. However, we are containing it, and they are containing it, and other people are containing it. And then when you look at death rates and mortality rates, you have to consider that this is not like seasonal flu. Especially outside of Hubei province, there are far fewer cases and infections than are within it. Although the population of China outside is much huger, that wouldn't happen in a normal pandemic. And in Wuhan, they didn't know what they were doing in the very early days. So I think if you're looking at the death rates, and I think it's much more easier to really connect with the real life situation we're in, rather than theoretical ideas, to look at the death rates in China and then compare that with the flu. So the death rate for COVID-19 is 5 in Hubei province, 5 in 100,000. It's only 0.22 for China, and only 0.083 for China outside of Hubei province. And China, outside of Hubei province, they only had 4 cases yesterday that actually happened in China, and they had quite a lot of cases that came from abroad. It's got to the point where China is now quarantining Italy and Iran and South Korea to prevent, because they have to go through 14 days quarantine to go back into China, because China has so cleared it of COVID-19. They're worried about people coming back to them from other countries. So now suppose US was just to behave like one of the Chinese provinces, then with the death rate of the Chinese provinces, they could expect maybe 27 deaths for the whole of the United States. And that compares to a minimum of 12,000 deaths a year for seasonal flu. And I'm sure it's obvious that if only the US could do what China did, it could make a huge difference. And then you get people, and in the United Kingdom, we've got 5 million, and people in the United Kingdom is much less than the US. We'd have much less than that, 27 deaths, if we were to be really strict about it. We've had 1 death so far in the United Kingdom. And now, even if the death rate was the same as Hubei province, so that's quite high 5 death rate, and that's 13,000 deaths, and that's not far above the 4, which is the lowest number, of 13, I think it's 12,000 or something, which is the lowest death rates for flu. And then, now another thing, if you want to go in the other direction of the really worst, and if the entire US had the same death rate as the Diamond Princess, then you get 500,000 deaths, which is a lot. For the Diamond Princess, I mean, the world is not going to get as bad as the Diamond Princess, where they were just stuck in this thing together, and they just find it very difficult to quarantine it properly, and it obviously didn't work. The quarantine on board the Diamond Princess didn't work properly. We can do social distancing, and we can do things. So the very simple measures that anyone can do, washing your hands a lot. Now, part of it was the Diamond Princess. They didn't seem to follow the rules that were being imposed, and there may have been conditions in the ship and things like that. We're certainly capable of reducing it to much less than that. And so if the entire US had the same death rate as the Diamond Princess, it'd be 9 times more deaths than the worst flu season. Most of those in the 70s and over 80s. But we can stop that for sure. I can't see it getting as bad as the Diamond Princess. And so anyway, so COVID-19 is more deadly than flu, for sure, with its latest treatment measures, and then this is only if you've got advanced ventilators, ECMO and so on. Then its case fatality rate is 0.7%. That compares to 0.13% for flu, so it's about 5 times worse. But COVID-19 can be contained, and that's the big difference. That's why WHO keeps saying over and over again, unlike flu, we have to focus on containment. And it's not easy, but it's going to be even worse if we don't do this. And if we contain it to, say, a few dozen deaths in the United States, it might be expensive and difficult, but it's far less expensive and saves way more lives than alternative just letting it spread like you do for flu and having thousands of people in the United States. Indeed, if it was like Wuhan, if you've got 13,000 people in the United States who die, then you'd have several times that number who need ventilators and ECMO, which is very, very difficult, and you need vast numbers of technicians trained to deal with all these cases as well. Thousands and thousands of technicians, far more than you have already, because you've still got the severe cases and the ventilators you need anyway for the accidents and things and for serious diseases. And then you've got all these ventilators, and they use ventilators for a long, long time, up to 6 weeks on a ventilator if you are if you get this bad. So this would really, really stretch. And if the United States just let it in, or the UK just lets it in and lets it spread, and then deals with the deaths, and then tries to protect the elderly and the flu people and treats it pretty much like the Diamond Princess, then we are headed for really quite tough times. So your personal risk is still going to be quite small. Not many people die of flu compared with the population as a whole. It is not going to be the major death factor, major reason of dying, even in the year in which you have this. Things like traffic accidents, heart attacks, cancer, things like this are going to, over the year, are going to be more than this. But it's still going to be very significant. So we have to stop it. And I just don't get it, the people who just ignore the WHO. The WHO say that we have to stop it and that we have to contain it. And we've got to keep on doing that until the very last chance of doing that. And if it's a pandemic, they will declare it a pandemic. But until we know for sure it's a pandemic, we have to try to contain it. So I've said this many times in my other articles, but some of the people just reading this article may be not very aware of the context. So it may help me to give this context and really emphasize it. So if we do contain it, then a few dozen deaths in the US may be expensive to contain it so rigorously, but far less expensive and saves way more lives than just letting it spread like you do for flu. Flu is a very different situation, and then treating all the sick people, which be many more. So that's why the WHO say that. Now, the rest of this, they're not calculations from the WHO, but I can't find any figures, so this is just illustrative. I can't find anyone who's projecting this. So if you look at the burden of influenza, so there we are, I worked out these numbers. It's 0.13% for flu, I worked that out from these figures. So it's the number of deaths per year and the number of illnesses per year. Divide the illnesses by the number of deaths, and you get the case fatality rate for flu. So that's quite straightforward, and that's where I got it. There's 0.13% for flu, about a fifth of what it is for COVID-19. So it's 5 times more deadly. And then this called calculation, I've got a list of them here. Death rates for COVID-19 in deaths per 100,000, Dubai is 5, China 0.22, China outside 0.0083, which is a tiny amount. And then the death rates for flu in the US between 4 and 18 compared with those. And so yeah, that's just a calculation, the same for Diamond Princess, case fatality rate. And that's if they had, that's working out 720 deaths. If the same as the whole of China, it'd be 720 deaths, but that's biased by Hubei province. And if it's just the China outside of Hubei province, it's just 27 deaths. It's the equivalent for the US. Of course, it would be more if it's spreading more amongst all people, but if it's just the general population, and the less old people in China than there are in the US by percentage. And then, so what are the differences between COVID-19 and flu? That's a thing by the WHO. I strongly recommend you watch that video. It's a little bit technical, but it's not that bad. And they're trying to talk to the general public. So some of the big differences, it doesn't spread through children hardly at all or public spaces. Mainly spreads through person-to-person contact, very close or prolonged. Almost no symptomless spreaders. Now, some people are infected with it before they show symptoms, but it doesn't seem to be a strong factor of them, in turn, infecting other people until they get the symptoms. It's very rare. So that's why it's so easy to contain compared with flu. It just wouldn't work. And that's why you never see anything like this in all of history. It doesn't mean you can do it for all respiratory diseases. In fact, what China did for COVID-19 would not work for flu. Just wouldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. You couldn't trace all the contacts because people wouldn't know. So with COVID-19, almost always your contact that you need to trace is someone that you know very well, and they're visiting your family, or it's a colleague at work, or they belong to the same religious organisation and you're together in a gathering. And that is why they've been able to do contact tracing for COVID-19. They can't do it with flu in the same way, because you have the symptomless spreaders, so the contacts don't even know that that the person is sick, and you have much easier spreading in kind of publicly, like children at school, where you don't know which child it came from, and in public places and so on. You just don't get that with COVID-19, or so little. Now, you've got to remember, you don't have to stop everything. If you have a few slip through, it doesn't matter, as long as you then have some kind of net to catch them. So that if they go through your contact tracing, then you have a kind of community-wide net to catch the few that go through. And so if they start up another outbreak, and then you can't contain that quickly as well. Then, if you have only very few that go through, and then very few that go through again for the next cluster, if the cluster does start up, and then a few again, then very, very quickly the whole thing is over. So it's only you only have to get rid of most of the spreading. In fact, if it's sort of doubling every 3 days, then you can get rid of of more than half the people spreading it, then it's going to eventually disappear to nothing for long enough, if you could do that for long enough. So yeah. Now it's just a bit about the ratio of deaths to cases, but that's that. So short summary, it's not the same as the death rate, which is only 5 per 1,000, and the reason it's the death rate can be so much lower, even with the case fatality rate being higher, is because it can be contained, unlike flu. And so I ask if anybody knows of a good source on projecting the death rates for the worst case. I just can't find anything, so but I wanted to help reassure people and help them understand why the death rate is not the same as the case fatality rate, and is likely to be much less. And in this case you can be confident of not getting it with relatively simple measures, and this will surely stop it from spreading to nearly all the population, unlike flu, where once it starts to spread widely, there's nothing you can do to stop it very large, because you wash your hands. It's mainly close contact, so you've got to be careful about that. It's touching your face when you wash your hands. If someone asks you to shake hands with them, then you know if there's this new using your elbow instead of your hands, or using your feet. But if it's socially impossible and you just got to shake hands, then just don't touch your face after you shake hands, and wash your hands as soon as you can. and then you'll be okay. And also clean surfaces and keep away from anyone who's obviously sick. But although they keep saying that over and over again to keep a distance from people, it's actually it's very, very rare that it just doesn't seem to happen with this disease, that you get it from someone on the same tube, even on the tube, or someone on a plane or something, even though they do warn you against that. And they want to stop all spreading, so do be careful about that too, and that will certainly protect you from the flu. But in the case of this, then even people who are close family and you're close together, then only 1 in 10 get it, which is quite low. And it doubles mainly because humans are so very sociable, and we have so many contacts. And for instance, in Finland, then they say, I'm not sure how much truth there is, but they say that people in Finland keep a much bigger distance naturally when they're talking to each other. And there's this joke that you sort of say, hi, the other person, the other side nodding, hi, that's close enough, good to see you today, 5 miles away. I mean, they're a bit like that in Finland. So presumably in Finland it wouldn't spread very much. And just feels comfortable, like, Italians feel comfortable when you're really, really close like that. And in Finland, then people just like to be at a great distance from each other when talking. They feel more at ease when they're at a great distance. So if you've got less physical contact naturally in your society, it'd be interesting to see what happens if it goes to Finland. And anyway, but we all need to do a little bit more of that distancing now. But it's not that important it's not so important as they think. It's mainly things like washing, keeping, if you're cooking, then do an awful lot of washing your hands and cleaning surfaces, and be a bit aware of not passing it on to the people around you if you've got someone visiting as well, because an awful lot of this is the people who are visiting you, and them getting it. So just having good keeping very clean when you're cooking and so on, and making sure that everyone is doing their best to just be but this is only really, you only really need to start thinking about this once it starts spreading in the community where you are. So the moment it's clusters, and if you hear that there's a case in your nearest airport, in your nearest city or something, then you don't need to worry that you're going to get it, because it's immediately quarantined. And then all the contacts, and they will, if you're a contact, you'll have someone ring you up pretty quickly, because they get onto it quickly. And if you haven't been contacted, then you're not a contact. And so your risk is no different than it was before they discovered that case. And so it certainly can be contained at the moment. We can stop it completely. If it ever does go all the way to just spreading, and then if the WHO, if it gets to the point where it can't be contained, and they decide they just can't be contained, if that ever happens, they will have no hesitation in calling it a pandemic. The reason they don't call it a pandemic right now is because it can be contained, because China's shown it can be done. South Korea is on the point of containing its outbreak. It's getting fewer cases per day. And Italy, then it's certainly not. It's not clear what's happening quite there yet, but it doesn't look. It's not increasing quite as fast as it was. And if you go by what happened in China, then maybe seems to be about 3 weeks or so from starting to a couple of weeks from putting on the imposing, 3 weeks if it's well contained. So a couple of weeks from now, 3 weeks from the start, a couple of weeks from now, then hopefully Italy will have reached its maximum number of cases per day, probably well before then. And South Korea already has, and Iran probably will be by then as well. So look at it that way. If these are the only outbreaks we're going to have, then it's looking very promising. And all the little clusters and a small amount of community spreading. I mean, the UK is freaking out over 110 cases or something. But the thing is, if you look at them, they're nearly all imported. You don't need to worry about imported cases. It's a very big difference between the 110 or whatever it is cases in Singapore, where it's from clusters that developed and they're all internal. It's been expanding. That was quite serious, and they've pretty much contained it now. That's very different from it coming from Italy and Japan and Iran. And in that case, then it's Italy's problem and Iran's problem, and we're just part of the contact network. And that's why, again, they say travel restrictions don't really help much. They actually can make things worse, because Italy can do its contact tracing through to the United Kingdom. We have these contacts that we trace back and say, well, that comes from Italy, and we do our bit of it. So we're basically doing contact tracing of the Italian outbreaks and the Iranian outbreak and the Japanese outbreak. That's what's happening in the UK. And there's very, very little internal spreading in the UK yet. So you can have over 100 cases, but it's just because you're a cosmopolitan country where a lot of people from Italy, in fact, we are probably getting it concentrated from Italy and Japan because it's a place that people like to visit. So, or a lot of connection or whatever. And so don't think that because we've got a sudden increase in the United Kingdom that it's suddenly going to end up with thousands and tens of thousands of people. I don't see that yet. So the UK doesn't look like another big cluster at the moment. It's just the reason I'm saying that is because nearly all the cases are imported, and they're not spreading. They are being successfully contained. Very few of the imported cases are spreading. Anyway, so that's me. I am putting a positive thing here, but I'm not putting a positive. It's not a positive spin. I'm just telling you what the WHO say, and I don't think that I'm making it more positive than they're saying, except that I'm perhaps drawing your attention to the positive side more than they do. So, but they say very clearly that I'm doing that to counterbalance the media, because they are not reporting this side at all. So please don't mistake and think that because I'm reporting mainly the positive side, it doesn't mean that I'm ignoring the negative side. And absolutely clear that there is still this risk of a pandemic, although it's not as bad as people think it would be if it was a pandemic. It gets very exaggerated. It's not going to be these 80%. That just doesn't make sense. That 80% would get it. That is assuming no containment. And that again, WHO, they were talking yesterday about how these are just theoretical. Then you look at the real world, and the real world doesn't match what these theoreticians say. However distinguished these theoreticians are, if their predictions don't match the real world, then you need to look at what the real world is doing. And it's not doing what they predicted. They were predicting all sorts back in January, and the real world just didn't do what they predicted. And yet they continue to predict these things, even though the real world continues not to do what they're predicting. So when that happens, you need to look at what the real world is doing and have a little bit of a sanity check and say, who do I listen to? And I listen to the WHO because they know all about this sort of thing. And for as long as they're saying it's positive and that it can be contained, then I will continue to say it can be contained, not parroting them, but because I greatly respect them, and as my assessment of their reliability, that in my assessment they are the best sources we have on this particular topic. So I have no apologies at all for being positive, for as long as the WHO being positive, and for saying it can be contained as long as the WHO say it can be contained. But please don't think it's easy to contain. We have to be very strong on this. We have to be very decisive. We have to engage as the general public and the government, and luckily the countries are doing that. And look at Italy, knocking down 11 provincial towns, and all the rigorous contact tracing. So hopefully now this may help some of you who have not understood this. I haven't explained this article properly. I may not have given the context very well for those who don't understand it. And I will add this as a video to it, so as to help people to understand the context and understand where it's all coming from, And so I do hope that this deals with this discussion that's been going on and it's been rather disturbing some of the members of the group who've been panicking a bit because they got scared by this discussion. So, because I was reassuring them, and then other people are saying, "Oh, but don't listen to him because he's being too positive." So I'm not being too positive. I don't think I'm being too positive. I never sugarcoat. And if you look at my track history in the back, in the past, for instance, people were continually saying that the US was going to go to war with North Korea, and I'd say, no, that's not happening. And people say, how can you possibly say that's not going to happen? I say, well, I go and listen to the generals and the experts. There's not going to be a war with Iran. There's not going to be a world war with Iran. There's not likely to be a war with Iran at all. And then all people were saying, but Twitter is saying that there's going to be a war with Iran. And Twitter is saying there's going to be a world war, and that we're going to have what's the world? I'm affecting my memory. Where you're called up and you're called up for service, and they would say we're going to have that as well. I'm saying no, rubbish. That's nonsense, and that is because I went to the experts, which in that case were retired generals. In this case, it's WHO. I have a good track record here because I tell you what the experts say. So it's not really my track record. It's a track record of the experts that I go by. So that is why I'm saying that we can remain positive, and the WHO is right. The WHO, I'm sure they're right because they're the experts on this topic. They don't say it definitely can be contained. They say it's a new disease. We don't know much about it yet. We're learning every day. But the evidence from China is very, very, very clear. It can be contained. And if we do the same, we can contain it. And if Italy is doing this, and Iran is doing this, and South Korea is doing this, and South Korea is getting towards the point of succeeding in it, and the other two will too soon. And Japan, I'm sure Japan will. They've got plenty of resources, and they've got a huge motivation with the Olympic Games. So that's and really, and the WHO, finally the EEC came through with a big fund of $123 million, which is the start of their urgent funding for, they needed 625 million total. And the IMF has come through, and the World Bank, with huge multi-billion support packages for the poorer countries to help them through the crisis if they have a big outbreak, and if they have if they have the economic effects of what's happening with COVID-19. And China and the United States, and they have found 8.3 billion, I think it is, that they're going to use. Many things, an awful lot of that is preparedness, but some of that is for the contact tracing and and a lot of it's for vaccine development. So we may well have a vaccine, that more than 20 different vaccines being developed. There are large numbers of clinical trials going on in China, and mainly in China because of the high rate there. I suppose now we could start having clinical trials in Italy as well, and in Iran. But it's really, even there's not that, we haven't got the high death rate quite of Wuhan, but Wuhan's death rate is going way, way down. And the number of new cases per day, and this number of sick people in China is going way down, and the rest of the world can do the same. Anyway, so I hope that helps a bit, and I hope this article is a bit more understandable now.